Hey everyone, just hopping on here. I've opened up my side panel, my chat panel, to say hello. If you see that, can you also say hello there as well? Just in that way, I know that you can actually hear me and that you can see me. So you'll see it on the right-hand side of your screen. Might depend on if you're using your phone or an iPad or a computer, how you're coming into this. All right. Hi, Maria. Hi, Lisa. Okay, a whole bunch of you. Hi, Tracy. All right, there's a whackload of you coming in here. So, hi, Tina. We have there's over 200 people that registered when we posted this just a couple of days ago. Only 100 can actually have access to come on live. So those who don't get on live, hi, Amy. I'm good. How are you? So we will make sure when the recording goes out, everybody who registered will obviously get the recording. Okay. All right. Yeah. So as more of you are coming in. So how we're actually going to do this is we're going to go for probably about 60 to 70 minutes, depending on how many questions we have towards the end. So I've made some key points for myself to make sure that I stay on focus and get through. There was a lot of questions that came through, a lot of questions. Obviously, when we're talking about something like weight loss, for a lot of people, it's been something that they've been struggling with for quite some time and have tried a lot of different things. Hi, Shireen. So there was a lot of questions. Now, a lot of the questions were similar, so I was able to actually group them, which is good. And then I'm sure there will be more questions as we get to that point today doing it live. What I will do when I ask you if you have any questions is instead of using the Q&A box at the bottom, we're not going to use that. What we'll do is we'll focus on just using the chat bar that I have here on that right-hand side when we get to that point. So today's masterclass this is not just about telling you what you should be eating and how you should be exercising in order to lose weight. Hi, Ange. This is actually more about why you possibly are having a struggle in your body in terms of your weight in the first place. And what was fascinating to me when I put this out there on Sunday, I believe, maybe Saturday. What day is today? It's Monday. Everybody else living like that? Like I'm like, legitimately, what day is it today? I feel like every day is Monday right now. But what I found that was interesting is there was probably for every, 5 questions I had on weight loss, there was 1 or 2 women that were asking about how to keep weight on because they're losing so much weight right now in the way that their body is responding to stress. And so the reason I decided to put this masterclass together is that over the last couple of weeks, and primarily when I held the immune masterclass and the adrenal health masterclass, a lot of the follow-up questions from women were, I am visiting the fridge every moment of the day now because I am at home. I am eating when I'm not even hungry. We're baking in the house right now because it's something to keep the kids occupied with or to keep me busy doing. And I'm eating it all and I'm stressed out. And I'm watching the news and I'm not getting outside as much and my gym is closed and finances are a struggle and all of these things are mounting. And what a lot of them have been finding is that their clothes are not fitting as comfortable, that they're feeling puffy, that they're feeling inflammation, that they're just not feeling well at all. And so these were a lot of the questions that were coming in. And so it's much easier for me to host something like this than it is to answer one-to-one emails. And the other reality is that no, you are not the only one, Lisa, at all. I would say that this is like, I'll be totally honest and transparent with all of you. I do this for a living. I find I am like, same thing. I'm not even hungry and I find myself in the kitchen and I'm like, why am I in here looking for things to eat? I'm not even hungry right now, but you get bored. It's also a form of our own anxiety that starts to work itself out in that way. Right? It's like we start to do something and we can feel something kind of bubbling to the surface and we need to distract ourselves. You might distract yourself with your phone and scrolling through media. You might do it in the kitchen. You might do it with a glass of wine, another cup of coffee, shopping online, whatever the heck it is. We all have that form of distraction. And sometimes that is what is actually leading to the end result being something that's making our body not feel its best and feeling uncomfortable. I'm at work and will try and watch and listen as much as I can. Oh, you're all good, Tanya. And there's going to be a recording of this as well too. So stay on and listen to what you can. And then if you have to pop off, it's all good. Okay. So what I'm going to take you through today is I'm going to talk to you about the foundational elements that I really think you all need to understand before you're trying a new diet, a new approach. I'm going to talk to you and explain to you the difference about things like time restricted eating, which is TRE, intermittent fasting. I'm going to talk to you about your blood sugar. I'm going to give you some biohacking tips about your health, because here's what you all need to understand. You actually have to be healthy in order to last weight that is going to be long-term weight loss. Meaning you could do something drastic and lose a few pounds, but it's most likely going to find its way back onto your body if you haven't really been working on the underlying issues that are going on. I'm going to talk to you about exercise selection, what you will hear mainstream that are your best choices for losing weight, but what you really have to take into account with your own body. And then I'm not going to spend a ton of time on supplements today, because I honestly don't believe that supplements are the needle we need to be pointing towards when it comes to weight loss. I think those are accessory things. And what I'm going to do when I send you the recording of this is I will reattach the recording of the Adrenal Masterclass and the Immune Masterclass, where I do talk a lot more in detail about supplements. I want to keep today focused on you, your questions, your struggles, and your lifestyle, not on the supplements. And we're going to spend more talking about your food today, because that's the thing you're struggling with. You're not struggling with going in and being like, oh God, I ate way too many B12 today, Jen. I had too many probiotics today, Jen. Like I remembered to take all my supplements too many times. That's not the struggle that's going on, right? It's that you're eating nonstop, choosing the unhealthy things, and you're feeling that show up in your system. So I am going to minimize the chat screen right now. So I'm going to close it down for the moment. I'm going to go into what we're talking about. And then if you've ever done a webinar with me before, I do not love slides. I want this to be conversation based. I want it to feel like, you're sitting on the couch with me and asking me these questions, and we're having a dialogue. And then what we're going to do is then I'll pop back in. I'm going to ask you clarifying questions. Did that make sense? I sometimes also quiz on these as well too. There's like no points. You're not getting graded. But it's important that you actually understand what you're hearing, because if you don't, you're going to get stuck back in the same pattern of repeating a bad habit over and over again that's going to then lead you to feeling not so well. Okay, so if you are all in for that, just say yes, ready to go in that chat bar, and then I'm going to minimize and close the chat for now, and I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of what I want you to all learn, know, and understand. Okay, awesome. I'm going to grab a sip of water. So what I'd recommend is that you have a drink nearby, a tea, a water, hopefully not alcohol. It is 1:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, although we are homeschooling, and that you have pen and paper, but remember that this is going to be sent out to you, so you are going to have the ability to go back and listen and make some notes on your own, okay? All right, so I'm going to close out the chat here. The other thing that I would highly recommend, if you really want to get the most out of this today with me, is please do not be scrolling on your phone while you should be actually listening and paying attention. And I know we all do it. We're guilty of it. And you think, because I can't see you, I don't know that you have it in your right hand as you're listening. If you really are trying to learn and understand this, let's start right now by breaking the habits that could be holding us back, which is massive distraction. Turn your notifications off on your computer so they're not dinging you, and just try to stay with me for the next 60 to 70 minutes, okay? So what I think are the most basic foundational elements that we need to bring our attention to first is, number one, what is the current state of your health right now? So I know, because I've been doing this, I've been in practice now for over 20 years, 2 decades. The number one reason that people will come to me initially, or it's the top 1, 2, or 3, is weight loss is wrapped in there. But before you can get to a place where we put a strategy in place for your protocol to lose weight, you have to really understand first, what is your current state of your body's health, okay? Are you suffering from an autoimmune condition? Do you have a few different medical issues that are going on right now? How long have you been struggling with your body weight? What is the current state of your digestive system? I think that if we hone in and focus on this one right here, it can tell you a lot about what is possibly keeping your body in a position of either holding on to excess weight and inflammation, or where you find yourself reaching for and grabbing certain things that you don't even really want. You're just craving it out of that boredom, or possibly craving it because there is a deficiency in your system or something else that's going on. So do you have a lot of gas? Do you have chronic bloating? This was a huge one that came in with the questions is, why am I so gassy and bloated? Why do I feel so heavy? Why can't I do up my pants anymore? These are things you need to be paying attention to. Are you burping a lot? Do you have pain in your abdomen after you're eating? Are you constipated? Do you have reflux? Do you have diarrhea? Do you alternate back and forth? So if you are suffering from gas and bloating all the time, a couple of things that you need to start to make note of for yourself is it happening all day? Like, it doesn't matter if you've eaten, if you haven't eaten, you have the gurgling, you've got gas and you feel bloated, literally from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed? Or do you start the day off feeling pretty good? You wake up, the stomach feels like nothing is irritating it. And as you start to move into your day and start to consume food, now you start with the distended belly. You're starting to hear it. You're starting to feel the bloating. And this is a pattern that continues on over the day. And the more that you eat, the more that you recognize that this is now becoming an issue that's getting stronger and stronger as time goes on. So what I would ask you to do is to back it up and notice, okay, well, what is that first meal of the day that you've had? Are you potentially eating something that is triggering that because it actually doesn't do well with your system? Like, are you maybe having dairy when your body does not do well with that? Are you starting the day off with something really sugary and processed, like a croissant or a donut or a processed muffin or a big thick bagel with cream cheese, right? Maybe your body doesn't do so well breaking down the grains. Maybe you have an intolerance to gluten. Maybe you have a slightly underactive digestive system where you do not have enough enzyme power or hydrochloric acid. This is a huge one because as we age, we do start to lose the amount of hydrochloric acid in our stomach. And you need to have that in order to have the right environment for when you have chewed up food that drops down into your actual stomach and the contents of the stomach, that there is enough power in there to continue to break this food down so that it can actually be digested. And then once it's digested, that's how your body will start to pull those nutrients from it and send them out to where they need to go in your body. If what's happening is not that, and what happens is you don't really chew your food all that well, you are eating things that are more inflammatory for your system. You're grabbing stuff on the go, you're eating your meal and then you're taking bites and snacks off your kids' plates as well too. And maybe you've just put too much into your system at that one time. And now it makes its way down into the stomach, and the stomach is like, awesome. Like, we barely have enough hydrochloric acid and enzymes to work with food if it was pureed like a smoothie that you put into us. But now you have chunks of bagel or chunks of egg or whatever it is that you've just had. And P.S., we don't have teeth in our stomach to further chew and break this down. So you are 100% relying on that HCl, that hydrochloric acid, and your enzymes to further break this food down. Now, if that doesn't happen, if your body is just like I got nothing, I can't help you out here, the system doesn't go, no problem, we'll just open up the back chute and just let this undigested food come out. Now, you might think that's what happens because you might see undigested food in your poop, like in your stool. But what actually is happening is that food will sit there and start to putrefy and ferment. That's your gas and bloating. Gas and bloating is putrefying, fermenting food, and your body not having the ability to break down certain antigens, primarily protein antigens, in that food. Okay, so now you understand what gas and bloating means. Yes, everybody understands now gas and bloating, undigested food, putrefying and fermenting in your stomach. Do you think that gas and bloating from eating a food means that your body loves it and that's its way of like raising the roof and letting you know that this feels good for it? Or do you think that if you get gas and bloating from eating certain foods, that's your system's way of saying, no thanks, you need to take this out? That's a real question. You can answer me. I opened up the chat again. Things that are going to help you with this. Okay, number one easy hack that I have found in the morning for people that helps time and time again when you wake up is you do warm water, a little bit of fresh lemon juice, and about a half a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Why is this so powerful in your body? The warm water helps to encourage peristalsis, which is the movement of your fecal matter. Do you know how much weight the average person loses when they have a good quality bowel movement? Anywhere from a half to up to 2 pounds they will lose of fecal matter when they have a healthy bowel movement. So if you don't have a good poop every day or 2 to 3 times a day, you are literally full of old fecal matter, waste that is off-gassing and backing up into your system, that is recirculating upstream, that could be repotentizing certain hormones like estrogen in your body and causing a lot of problems. So getting on board with increasing your digestive ability and having a healthy bowel movement is really step number one. So a mug of warm water, like a half a lemon juice squeezed in there, and about a half a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and sip on that. Then if you wanted to have your cup of good quality coffee, you could, or dandy blend or a green tea, something like that. But try to start your morning off with that. Very inexpensive, okay? And that's going to be something low barrier. It's not a capsule or pill going into your body that is going to help to improve digestion right out of the gates when you wake up, okay? So that is tip number one. The next thing is that if you find that you are not having these regular bowel movements, is again, looking at, okay, how long has this been going on for? And trying to pinpoint, like, where and when did this start? Do you notice that certain foods, like if you eat more sugar, if you have more dairy, if you have more processed foods, that bungs you up? Like, it literally creates a plug, because that is actually what happens. Those foods in our system are highly inflammatory, and they're very damp food. They're very mucus forming. And that mucus, it also helps to breed yeast in the body. And so that will cause a lot of traffic jam happening in the actual bowels. The other thing you might notice is if you are wiping repeatedly, this is also a sign of yeast, of dampness, of, unhealthy bacterial cultures in the body. So if you have to wipe multiple times and it's very mucky, we want to work on making sure, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the food things that we're trying to move away from that. Now, diarrhea, on the other hand, I'll have some people that say, yep, I go to the bathroom every day. And I'm like, okay, describe it to me. Like, how are your bowel movements? And they're like, well, they're loose, they're watery, I go, all the time. That's not a healthy bowel movement. You can actually look up online. There are different charts, the Bristol chart, which will show you what healthy poops look like. They're not pellet poo, they're not mud piles. It's like, for most people, it'll say like from your elbow joint to your wrist, like the length of that in like an S curve, and like in a light brown color. That would be healthy. Anything kind of on either end of that spectrum, or especially if you're seeing the undigested food, we've got to get the gut under control. If you remember my immune boosting webinar, more than 70% of your immune system lives in your gut. So if your goal right now is to simultaneously fit into your clothes and also keep you and your family's immune system supported, you have to be focusing on that gut microbiome. And our microbiome really plays a huge role in our weight and whether or not we're going to be an ideal weight, overweight, or even obese. And there's been numerous studies. You can go into PubMed and read tons of studies on this that have actually shown that our genetic material and that the actual bacteria that lives in our gut, because we're 90% bacteria, can actually potentize, make it more easy for our system to put on weight versus not. And they've actually done fecal transports in mice where they have taken the fecal matter of an overweight mouse and they have put it into a thin mouse. Change nothing about their lifestyle, their diet, anything else. And over time, that mouse has actually started to put weight on. They've also done the opposite, where they took fecal matter from a healthy, thin mouse and they put it into an overweight mouse. Change nothing else about the amount of food they gave that mouse, the amount that it could move inside of its habitat, and that mouse lost weight. So the bacteria in our gut matters tremendously on every level. I'm just highlighting the weight perspective, but it matters on every single level. And the other really important thing to understand is that your microbiome is impacted hour to hour, day to day. So what you did 24 hours ago is going to show up in your system, 24 hours later today. So we're Monday, it was the weekend. If you drank more, if you ate processed foods and you woke up feeling cloudy in your brain, foggy, sluggish, coating on your tongue, thirstier than usual, your joint pain was worse, your pants aren't fitting well, you're constipated today, that is a direct result of the information that you gave your body, the food you gave your body in those last 24 to 48 hours. Now, what's really cool about that is I'm talking about how it can change in a not so positive way. It can also completely shift in 24 to 48 hours in a beautifully positive way, meaning you get your veggies back in, you get more greens into your system, you increase your hydration, you focus more on protein, fat, and fiber, you move away from a lot of the processed sugar and processed foods and carbohydrates, and you focus on real whole food. You move your system a little bit, get back to your good quality sleep, and you're going to find, even by the time you wake up tomorrow, you're going to feel a whole lot better. So a food diary, Lisa, would be a great thing to do, especially if you're just like, I don't even know where to begin. You have to take account. And so I'm going to talk to you about a few different ways to do this. The first is actually like literally pen to paper, just keeping a journal, and not in a obsessive way. Literally just start to jot down what you've eaten, how did it make you feel? And then the other thing we'll talk about is actually tracking your macronutrients and how that can be beneficial for some people, but it can also be a trigger for other people. And so when we get to that aspect, I'll go deeper into explaining what that actually means and who I think that can be a good thing for and who I would never recommend that to, okay? So the other thing to understand is that the older that we get, right, in our bodies, like, trust me, I'm 40 now and I hear myself say that and I'm like, who's 40? Like, I'm like, I feel like I'm in my 20s. I feel better than I did in my 20s. But there are parts of my body on a cellular level and a genetic level that are starting to age. And so, the reason I choose to live the lifestyle that I do every day is not to maintain a certain weight. It's to make sure that my cells and my mitochondria and that my DNA are really healthy and strong, because that is actually what is going to have the final say, the ultimate say in how optimal our health is. Right. And I said in the beginning, if we want to lose weight, we actually have to be healthy in order to lose weight in a way where we can sustain it. But the older we get, the weaker our system gets on some levels, right? And so, the less resilient we can be to bounce back, which is why maybe now when you eat certain things or you kind of fall off your routine of movement, getting back into it feels like it takes you a little bit longer. So, it's going easy on yourself, but it's understanding that we really need to wake up every day and choose good things on a daily basis. This whole thing of like 80-20 or just move your body 3 or 4 times a week, I do not subscribe to that at all, right? I want you moving your body 7 days a week. I want you to eat healthy 7 days a week. Why? Because I want you to feel good 7 days a week. And what's so cool about your entire body is that every single cell and tissue in your system regenerates over the course of about 120 days. That's only 4 months. So we can either be giving it good information and resources for an amazing outcome in 4 months, or we can be giving it not such good information. Okay, so it's just something to think about. Your gut issues can also be part of your hormonal issues. And so this is where something that there's a few different tests you would have to look at. You won't see gut function in your regular blood work that you're getting in your doctor's office. The best thing to do is what's called a GI. It's a gastrointestinal MAP stool test. Your family doctor can't run this for you. You have to work through a functional nutritionist or a functional medicine doctor or an ND who offers it. And you literally, it's a poop test that you do at home, and it will tell you, do you have parasites, fungi, candida, infections? Do you still have, I will still see antibiotic residue in people's stool. I will see infections like H. pylori. I'll still see strep bacteria in there, things that show signs still of active Epstein-Barr virus, which if you ever had mono, that is like a stealth infection that could be in your system. Fluoride toxicity could be in there. There's so many different things. And all of that can be working towards creating this inability for your body to let go of that weight. In women, most commonly what I see is there is a certain enzyme that's called beta-glucuronidase. And beta-glucuronidase is an enzyme that lives in the gut and in the intestinal system, in the fecal matter. And if it's too high, if it's too elevated because of either the things that we're eating or chemicals in your environment or different products, plastics are a huge one to this. So if you're still drinking out of a plastic bottle, heating things up in plastic, using plastic bags, this would be a good time to make that switch over. Your makeup, skincare products, those types of things can increase this. And if you don't have a healthy good gut bacteria, it can kind of move on a runaway train. And if you have a high level of this beta-glucuronidase, what it does is the estrogen that your liver and your gut is trying to break down and to move out through detoxification, it gets recirculated and repotentized. This enzyme actually makes that estrogen even stronger now and moves it back upstream. What would that feel like in your body? Horrible PMS, really bad breast tenderness, horribly painful periods, major mood swings. Everything that you think about when you think of your period not being a lovely gift to your body would be amplified. Weight gain, bloating, those types of things. So if you're like, oh my God, check, 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 that might be something to reach out about. The other thing is taking a look at something like your Dutch hormone testing, which will tell you not just about what you're producing, but what is actually happening in your pathways, right? We have 3 different phases of detoxification in any human body, whether you're a woman or you're a man, a child or an elderly person. And so it's understanding from that deeper level, how can we be optimizing what's going on? But again, like I said, simple things every day that'll cost you nothing is what's going into the toilet. If nothing's going in the toilet, this is focus number 1 for you. And I guarantee you, when you start pooping regularly, you're going to start to lose weight. You will lose weight, not just from the actual fecal matter that is moving out of your body. You will lose weight because if you're pooping, that's a natural form of detoxification. Also, drinking enough water, right? In my opinion, I love to get people drinking 1 ounce for every pound that they weigh. So, on average, I would say if you can try to focus on at least 3 liters of water a day, like 3 mason jars. I love these big Yeti bottles. This is 40 ounces, and I get through at least 3 of these a day, 120 ounces. And it's just, you have to have it nearby. And don't sip like it's like a hot drink. You need to drink it. You need to chug a lug. Unless you're having your water with a meal, then I don't want you chugging while you're eating. But on that note, let's cheers and take a sip of water because now I'm thirsty. Okay. So other tips for poop. Put your feet on a stool when you're trying to have a bowel movement. Don't have your feet just hanging out. Your knees need to be above your navel. I've taught about this for, oh my God, over a decade now, and it can be a huge game changer for people as well too, okay? So let's move on here now. And you don't have to go and buy a potty squatty, right? You can go to the dollar store and get a $2 stool. You could use anything to just elevate those feet. So digestion is number 1. Are you digesting well? Now, if that morning routine of doing the lemon water and that, it helps a bit, but then you need more power at lunch and dinner for digestion, start off with this. It's very inexpensive. You're going to do a half to 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in about a half to 1 cup of water. Okay, so that's your ratio. And you're going to sip that. You're going to sip it. If you want to be fancy and you need to feel like you're having something, you can put it in a wine glass or a margarita glass. And you can make it feel more special while you're coming off of the alcohol, which will not be helping your weight loss journey. And you can sip that while you're making dinner. You could also sip this while you are eating your dinner, sipping, not chugging. The other thing I love about this suggestion is that, say you got through a meal and you thought you didn't need the help and then you're afterwards bloated, sip on this after, and it will help. If that's not strong enough, then use a digestive enzyme. There are good plant-based digestive enzymes. There's good tincture-based ones. I love St. Francis Canadian Digestive Bitters. There's also ones that you can buy in capsule if you don't like tincture. Platinum, Now-based brand has super enzymes that are really good. And you can get those at your local health food stores, or you can order them online through Amazon as well too. Number two that you need to focus on is blood sugar stability. This will be the thing that will prevent you from going in and out of the kitchen and snacking all the time. You are not meant to be eating 24/7 from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. And in our next point after this, I'm going to teach you about intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating and how you can use this to shape shift what's happening in your body. So blood sugar stability. How often are you eating? If you're the person that has to eat every couple of hours, that is an indication that we have got an issue happening with blood sugar and we need to start to work on that. You should be able to go 3 to 4 hours without feeling like you're going to bite someone's head off and, you get that hangry feeling, or you get a headache, or you feel nauseous, or you're just like, oh my God, like I have to eat now or else. You never want to get to that point for a few reasons. Number one, it is just like you're pulling on these threads of your adrenals, okay? And you are really impacting the way in which your pancreas regulates your insulin. Insulin is your only fat storing hormone, okay? So when we're talking about how do we get our body to do a better job at utilizing and storing or releasing and letting go of weight and of fat and managing our blood sugar, insulin is the hormone that we are talking about. So pay attention. You never want to get to the point where you have waited too long and you feel that dip and that crash in your blood sugar. Because at that point, you're going to smack someone if they offer you a salad. That is not what you want. You want the thing that's going to give you a quick hit to pick your blood sugar back up. So try to have at least 3 to 4 hours, okay? Ask yourself this question too. Do you wake up in the morning and start your day with caffeine right out of the gates? And why do you do that? Maybe you do it because you just love the experience, or maybe you do it because you have no energy, and if you don't have the coffee, you are flatlined. Maybe you do it because coffee suppresses your appetite and it lets you go longer without eating. If that is your routine that you are doing, that is a really slippery slope that will actually, towards the end of the day, have you eating more of the less healthy foods and actually work against your weight loss goal. So the thing you're trying to do in the morning by suppressing your appetite, it's going to bite you in the ass and find you later in the evening. And that's going to work against you. Okay. When you're eating, are you always reaching for something sugary, right? Like, even if you're going every 3 to 4 hours, do you find you have to have something sweet every time you eat? What I find with a dieter's mentality is that if you're always doing protein and vegetables, you're shortchanging yourself. Number one, that is not what you have to do. If you find that you don't do well with a lot of carbohydrates, and that has been successful for you, I would still encourage you to get some things in that will help to curb the sweet craving. So maybe you have low glycemic fruits like an apple, or you have some organic berries. Maybe you do something like that so that when you are eating, you're still getting that natural type of sweetness. It's coming in through fructose, but it's not going to rock your blood sugar in the same way that having a piece of chocolate or having, a donut or a muffin might. Okay, so think about that longevity piece. What are the combinations of your meals? So this is where I really love the PFF model, which is protein, fat, and fiber. So that would be something like, I'll use 3 examples, okay? So a smoothie in the morning would be, are you getting a protein source, like a protein powder, hemp seeds, Brazil nuts, a homemade nut milk in there? Are you getting in a fat, which could also be what I just said, or like a tablespoon of nut butter, or if you seed cycle as a woman, it could be a couple tablespoons of ground flaxseed or pumpkin seed, or maybe it's sunflower or sesame seed. And then do you have veggies in there? Frozen zucchini, frozen cauliflower, spinach, kale, arugula, whatever type of green that you want to have in there. And I'm telling you, don't knock the idea of frozen cauliflower or broccoli or zucchini in your smoothie. You won't taste it. Start with a little bit. It makes it nice and thick and really chills it. And those are great sources of nutrients that are going to help your body do a better job at detoxifying a lot of the anti-nutrients and excess estrogen out of your body. So they're going to help your hormones, and they're actually higher in fiber than spinach and kale are. So they're going to help to actually fill you and to feel satiated a little bit longer. Now, if you were doing something like eggs, instead of eggs and, just like a regular bagel or big thick toast, you could do an omelet. So you can add veggies in there. You could do a little bit of grated goat cheese in there if you wanted to, and you could have that with some avocado and maybe a little bit more sauteed veggies. Or you could do the egg, the avocado, and some berries, right? Or apple with some cinnamon over top of it. Those would be some really good options. If you love waking up and having something warm in the morning and you want to do your oatmeal, try and do your plain oats. Add your fresh berries onto that, and then some nuts and seeds, and then maybe drizzle some almond butter on that with some non-dairy milk. Those would be some better options to break your fast, right? And those are things that are going to stabilize your blood sugar. They're going to give you the right balance of hormones to also stabilize your mood hormones, your serotonin and your dopamine, and balance out the two key hormones in weight loss, which is leptin and ghrelin. These two are in unison, right? Ghrelin is our gremlin, it's our hunger hormone. Leptin is when I am satisfied, I'm good, you can step away now. You know when you've eaten something where you're like, I'm good, and you're now no longer preoccupied with your next snack or meal, and you can just move into your day. This is what I'm trying to teach you about, these combinations of your meals. And then same thing. So ideally, I love for people to have breakfast, lunch, dinner, okay? In the afternoon, if you need to have a snack, that's a good time to put it in. Get rid of your morning snack, okay? And I'm going to talk to you about the kind of time frame, the window that you could be using. And I'm going to give you a few options because I don't know you personally. I do not know what your life is. I don't know your current health situation that's going on. So I'm going to give you a few different scenarios, and then you can kind of slide yourself into that. The other option as well, too, is you could always reach out if you felt super overwhelmed and book yourself a consult to just go through these types of things, because I understand it. It's like, this is my first language, but it's not for a lot of you. And it's the same way I feel right now trying to teach my kids math at home and certain subjects where I am just like, I hear what you're saying. I understand the words I'm reading, but I do not know how to actually now take the next step. I'm overwhelmed. And I understand that that is the way a lot of people feel when it comes to their health, their food choices, setting up a plan, and stepping into that. So I totally get it if it feels overwhelming to you. Okay. And especially too, when I open it up for like the Q&A, ask me the things that are confusing you, and hopefully I can help to make it easier for you, and you can get off of here today and let your shoulders drop and just feel like, okay, I'm doing some things moving in the right direction. All right. The other thing around your blood sugar and looking at those combinations is, are you drinking too much alcohol? This is a big one. I know we all laugh right now saying that, thank goodness the LCBO is open but this is going to work against you on so many levels. Number one, it is going to royally funk up your hormones. Alcohol, especially wine, anything sugary, beer with the yeast and all of that, it is like, it's a no-go when it comes to really trying to achieve your goals. So if you have this big goal of trying to lose weight, and it's the thing that is like the bottleneck in your life, it's what's making you feel sad and depressed, and it occupies you every moment of the day, but then you're sitting down and you're drinking, you actually don't want to lose weight that bad. And I say that with love, but it's true. If you're still doing the things and the habits that you know do not make you feel good. I don't know anybody who pounds red wine on a daily basis and then wakes up and is like, that was the best decision ever. Like, honestly, like I feel like the best version of myself. No one does that, okay? No one. So recognize how it is making you feel. And why are you actually reaching for the glass of wine? Is it to de-stress? Is it to escape the reality of what is going on right now, or at home, or in general? Then we have to figure out something else to replace that with, right? Could it be the walk? Could it be, cooking an actual healthy meal? Like, I don't know what it is for you, but that is something that you have to figure out, because the alcohol, it's going to be a challenge, okay? How close are you eating to bedtime? This is another big one. If you eat really close coming into bed, or you find that your vulnerable time of the day is once you've had dinner, once the kids are occupied or the house is quiet, and now you sit down and this is when the snacking happens, you got to be really careful about this, because when you're eating, you are going to be secreting that insulin. That blood sugar is going to raise in response to you consuming food. And what oftentimes will happen is you might go to bed with a happy full belly and think that, that was a great thing. and now you have a restless sleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night. And the reason that will happen is you're going to have a blood sugar dip in the middle of the night, and that will wake you up. So that's going to put extra stress on your pancreas when you're sleeping, extra stress on your adrenals while you're sleeping. Not only is your insulin increasing, or rather being affected when you're sleeping because the blood sugar is dropping, your cortisol would be what increases. So your stress hormone. And it doesn't take long for cortisol to be produced. Takes about 10 minutes of stimulation for that sucker to go up, and hours for it to burn off and to come down, which is why if you are waking in the middle of the night and you think you just have to get up and pee and then you can't get back to bed, that is probably more of a hormonal issue that's going on. And the number one tip that I would give any of you reaching out to with that is stop eating 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. Do that for the next 7 to 10 days and notice what you notice. Notice if that shifts for you. I'm not saying you might not still wake up, but hopefully you'll fall asleep more easily and you'll get a better rested sleep. Okay. Okay. So what do I have next here in our blood sugar section? So that was the last part there. Now I'm going to talk to you about intermittent fasting and time restricted eating, because this was probably the number one question that came in. And it's because every now and again, now, first of all, intermittent fasting and TRE has been around forever. But every now and again, as a society, we extrapolate something that has been happening since the beginning of time, and then we sensationalize it. And we, put all of this attention around it, and then we attach words like weight loss to it. And now everybody jumps on it without really understanding what it means, how you do this appropriately for your body, and that something like a 16:8 model doesn't work for every single person. So intermittent fasting means different things to different people, okay? Even among the research community, I will tell you this, like, I am a nerd, straight up, I am a nerd when it comes to research, okay? I dive down deep rabbit holes when I start to look at literature. And I will tell you, and most of my colleagues, like we have Zoom chats about this kind of stuff. You'll find different information depending on what you're looking for. And the reality is you will find exactly what you are looking for. And when it comes to research on intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating, alternate day fasting and prolonged fasting, you will find a little bit of a lot of different things, okay? So typically, when someone uses the phrase intermittent fasting, what they're referring to is either the time-restricted eating, where there is a certain window of when you don't eat and a certain window of when you do eat, or they're talking about intermittent fasting where there's also a combination of calorie restriction. So you are eating less and you are eating in a smaller window. Or there's alternate day fasting, which is where you would fast every other day, but then eat your normal amount of calories and macronutrients the alternate days. So for instance, you might do alternating days, like maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you have your regular way of eating. And then on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, you do intermittent fasting where you have a shorter eating window. And then on Sunday, I'm not too sure what you do. I'm just giving that example. And then there's prolonged fasting, which is typically when it exceeds like 48 hours, 2 days. And that time of long-term food deprivation, because when you're doing a prolonged fast, you're usually just drinking water in that time. That is not something that I recommend for people to do unless you are being supervised by a practitioner who's really well-versed and experienced in that. In my personal practice, that is something that I have used in the past with people who've been really ill, where we have an autoimmune flare-up, where we have their body is really well and really unwell rather. And what we will do is actually put them into this unique metabolic state where they're getting into deeper ketosis and these glycogen stores are being depleted. And that helps with some system cleanup in their body, right? Apoptosis and autophagy, where the cells literally go in and we're killing those off that we no longer need and creating this deep cleanup. And a typical period of doing this for most people is going to be anywhere from 2 to 4 days, but this is not a weight loss approach. That is like a therapeutic approach. So what scares me is when practitioners are out there talking about this and posting this kind of information, and the uneducated person who only sees the 2 words weight loss in this post jumps into this. And if you are already unhealthy and unwell and this is what you're trying to do, you're going to feel like garbage and it is not going to be amazing. So what I recommend is this. The time restricted eating is a form of daily fasting period wherein the time of day which you're eating is limited, right? Or like we compress it, we make it shorter. So this is actually the way that I've eaten for as long as I can remember. When I first started to research this, so I was pregnant with Emerson, who is going to be 14 in June. So about 15 years ago is when I started to look into this. One of my teachers, Carolyn DuPont, I don't know if many of you know her, she had been doing this for a long period of time. And I spent a lot of time with her and in her home. And she was one of my professors at school many years before that. And so I started to do my own kind of research around this. Now, I was pregnant at the time, so I wasn't trying it. But soon after that, I started to have a 12-hour digestive rest. And this is really where time-restricted eating begins, is that you have a 12-hour window where you don't eat and a 12-hour window where you do eat. Now, again, from a physiological and an evolutionary perspective, your human body, your biological clock, your circadian rhythm and clock in your body was never designed to be ingesting food around the clock, okay? Now, obviously, what I'm talking about right now is different for shift workers. And that is something where if you are a shift worker, then maybe you do want to book a consultation or you want to work with somebody independently for something because your nights and days are forever changing. But the windows that I practiced with and that I encourage a lot of women in my programs to do, I have found to be most successful, is you stop eating around 7, 8 o'clock at night and you don't eat again until 7 or 8 o'clock the next morning. Okay. Now we hear 12 hours and we think, oh my gosh, that sounds like so long to go without eating. But then when we hear, like, literally what it is you eat dinner and then you don't eat again until you have your breakfast. I think the biggest thing when you are trying to figure out your clock is you have to know what time do you go to bed. So like for us in our house, like this house is shut down by no later than 10 o'clock. So for me, the 7 works really well because that's 3 hours before. And I'm at a point now where I go a little bit longer because it feels good for my body. But I also do that based on my cycle. And I'll talk about that in a moment. So I suggest that you start with the 12 hours. And then most people find their sweet spot once they get comfortable and used to that. So I would say to do the 12-hour time period for 7 days, every day for 7 days. This is how you can test this methodology out on your own body. Have a 12-hour break from eating. Now, why is this important? This helps on a cellular level, some of the things I just talked about. This helps to reset and stabilize your insulin production. This helps your body go into a deeper state of restoration, of cleaning up the debris, of going in and healing inflammation. This will help to regulate your hunger. This will help to calm down some of those inflammatory triggers that you have. This will help to improve your sleep, and it will help to improve your waistline. It can also help to stabilize cholesterol, blood pressure, resting heart rate, so many things. So giving your body a generous break, like think of how good it feels for you when you have wide open space, blank space, nothing going on. You actually get to breathe. You get to think. You get to like unwind. That is what we want to give our body the chance to do every single night that we go to sleep, because it is working dang hard for you all day long. Okay. Now, some people might go longer. Some people might go 14 hours. Some people might go 16 hours. I know some people who go 20 hours. I find for women specifically, a lot of men I find can do it where, and this would oftentimes be referred to as intermittent fasting, where they will just do lunch and dinner. So a lot of men I know, they will have a huge lunch and they will have a huge dinner, and that is it. And it works fine for them. For women, especially if you were still a menstruating, cycling woman, I don't find that to be super effective or super intelligent long-term. And the reason being is that all of us as humans have a circadian rhythm, but we as women also have an infradian rhythm, which takes into account the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. So, in the beginning part, when you are like, I would never do a prolonged fast or go 16 hours without eating during my luteal phase, which is the phase I'm in right now, because that is when my body is really, it's preparing, it is winding down. This is when I actually need more of those nutrients. I would do something longer like that on my menstrual cycle, when it is like that fertile void, when it is the winter, when it's that hibernation period to pull back. and I'm letting my body really rest and recover for those 2 to 4 days, is I would be consuming fewer calories and eating less often. A, because my activity is lower at that time as well, because I exercise in accordance to my cycle. And B, our body is working very hard. Your uterus is actually contracting to shed the lining and to actually create that bleed. Your bloodletting as well too. So if you have low iron, if you already have micronutrition deficiencies, this is a time to really just like go inward, simplify for those few days, and that is going to help your body long term. What I have seen time and time again for women in the Hormone Project is their menstrual cycles actually come on with greater ease and less pain and difficulty the more months in a row that they actually do this for themselves. Okay. So it's just something to think about. So some examples for you could be, if you are doing that, we talked about the 12-hour window. The one I found for myself when I started to do the 14-hour to be the most successful is it would be stopping to eat around 7 at night. And then I wouldn't, or maybe sometimes 6 for us, depending. And then I wouldn't have my first meal until around 10 a.m. So what does that look like? Wake up in the morning, drink your water. You're doing your warm water, and the lemon in the apple cider vinegar does not break your fast. Now, I also get asked all the time too, what about if I have a cup of coffee? What if I have Dandy Blend? What if I have a green tea? In my eyes, the reason we're doing this, right? And again, I focus more on the time restricted eating window, eating, as opposed to, oh, sorry, let me turn that off. That's actually Nature's Emporium calling me to let me know my order is ready for pickup, because I'm doing curbside pickup. Guys, what I was just saying. Oh, so I don't believe if you're going to have a coffee in the morning or you're going to have the Dandy Blend or tea, you're totally fine. Okay. To me, it is like a smoothie would break your fast. Chewing your food would break your fast. Even like almond butter off a spoon would break that fast. But if you are doing that type of a drink in the morning, you're A-okay. So I get up, I drink a full liter in the morning when I get up. I start today, this is, you can start today, and I drink a full liter from the time I wake up until I go downstairs and I take my supplements and I have the kettle on. And I get that in, okay? The earlier you can start to get your water in, you are going to be thirstier throughout the day, and your body's going to cue you to go back and get more of that because it feels so good. And then I would have my Dandy Blend probably somewhere around like 8. We typically wake up around 6 or 7 in the morning. So within a couple hours, I would have that lemon water or the Dandy Blend. And then around 10 o'clock is when I would actually make my first meal. So how it works for me, and again, I'm just going to give you this as an example, not a hard and fast rule for you, is I will have that around 10. I'm in practice with clients or I'm teaching classes like this. I will then have, like, I'm going to have my lunch after this around 2 o'clock. Okay. And then I'm back in practice, and then we will have a family dinner typically around 6:30 at night right now. I do not eat anything after dinner. And this has made my body feel very good. And when I do this with women in my courses and in my programs, digestively, this is the first area they notice. The bloating is gone, Jen. I wake up with a flat stomach. I am not craving as much. I feel sharper in my brain up top, and it's fantastic. So this is something to just play around with. But what I would say when you're doing this is that you give yourself the opportunity to try it out. Meaning that step 1 is start with 12 hours. Do it for 7 days. Step 2, if you feel good after that 12-hour period of time, stretch it to 13 or 14 hours. Stay there for 2 solid weeks. 2 solid weeks at that next jump. Notice how you feel. Like I said, I find a 14/10, meaning you don't eat for 14 hours, you consume all your healthy food in a 10-hour window, to be the sweet spot for most women. And, if you're trying to teeter it a little bit more towards that 16-8, you've got to take into account things like your schedule, where you're at in your cycle, and your current state of health. I do not recommend this for women who are suffering from a lot of adrenal issues. I really don't. If you are fried nervous system wise right now, and you are suffering from anxiety, you have a lot of different issues that are going on, start with the 12-hour and stick with that until you feel like you get some stability happening, that you've worked on your blood sugar, that you've worked on your digestion, and then you can start to titrate that time based on how you are feeling. Don't force it. Okay. I have a couple of women that I've been working with recently, and they're so obsessed with the scale right now. and trying to get to a certain number. Meanwhile, all of these other things in their body are improving, but they're so hyper focused on the scale. I'm not kidding you, every day they're emailing me. Okay, so now I weigh this. Okay, so my pants are feeling like, what am I not doing right? And it's like, holy moly. Like 24 hours has passed since the last day that you tried to do this. You have to calm yourself down. If you are so riddled with these emotions around your weight because you're stuck on that number, you are going to be seriously battling a hormonal war that you will not win. You will not win. You need to calm down those actions and reactions from your system. What if you're starving later at night? For example, at 9 o'clock, what would I do? I would have a tea. I would have a peppermint tea, a ginger tea, or a fennel tea. Okay. Your body's going to fight you in the beginning, especially if you've been a snacker at night. Your body is going to be like, what are you doing? It's going to be like, it's not going to be happy because it is used to it. So you've got to break the habit. So I'm saying give it 7 days, every single day for 7 days, and do not break that. Go that period of time. Okay. Oftentimes we are thirsty. We are not hungry. And so your stomach might be growling. That's ghrelin. That's the gremlin. It is saying, hey there, last meal's kind of worn off. I'm feeling a little hungry. I'm a little peckish. Can you go find something for me to have? And you're just going to say, no, little gremlin, but I will get you a peppermint, fennel, or ginger tea, because that will actually change your palate, and they're tonics for your digestive system. It will quiet everything down, okay? And this might sound silly, but if you're at the point where you're just like, oh my God, I'm so hungry, go upstairs, brush your teeth, and put yourself to bed. Put yourself to bed, okay? Your body is going to be fine. You are going to be okay not eating at night. It is just going to feel really wonky if you've been a late night snacker all the time. This is my husband, okay? He eats dinner, and then I'll hear him in the kitchen, and it's like, like an hour before we're going to bed, and I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just going to make a little, like yogurt parfait. I'm just maybe have some cereal. I'm like, are you even hungry? No, but I just walked in here, and I'm like, right. So you're not hungry, right? No, I'm not hungry. And the nights where he does eat something, he's up in the middle of the night. He does not sleep as good. His Oura ring will even tell him how restless he was and that his readiness is lower. And if he just has a glass of water and goes to bed, he wakes up and he's so much more rested. So it might be a challenge in the beginning for your system, but I'm telling you, if you try it, it will exponentially move you forward on this goal that you have of decreasing inflammation and weight, okay? Macro tracking. So in this, macros are short for macronutrients. And so they're the primary components of our food, right? Your macros are your carbs, fats, and proteins. Now, a lot of people do macro tracking. They would use an app like MyFitnessPal. There is a positive to this, and there is a not so positive. I would never recommend this tracking for somebody who has a history of eating disorders or who is obsessive about the numbers, because it will drive them crazy trying to make sure that they stay 100% on track. So if you know you get triggered by that, this would not be something that I would recommend for you at all, okay? When I do like using macros is for the person who writes in and says, I'm eating really healthy, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but I can't lose weight. And so our perception of what we're putting into our body, like you can eat very healthy food, but if you're having too much of it, if maybe the balance isn't right, like maybe your carbohydrates and fat are through the roof, but you're getting in very little protein for your system, and the ratio is just off, that can oftentimes be what the issue is. So tracking your macronutrients, it can help to, magnetize and focus the lens in where you realize, oh, I had no idea like how little or how much I was eating. I also like it tracks your fiber, it tracks your sugar, and some of your other micronutrients as well too. It can also be very helpful for the person who needs accountability but does not like meal plans. Okay. I've been doing this a long time. I have certain people who are like, I need a plan. You have to tell me what to eat. And then I have people who are like, I will burn the plan. Do not give me the plan. Just give me framework. And so macro tracking can be framework. Now, how do you know how many macros that you need to be splitting your days and your meals up into? You first have to know how many calories for your body, your exercise intensity, frequency, and your goals. Now, I can't tell you that here, again, without knowing you and without doing a consultation with you, but there's trackers that you can do online. You can Google, like, how do I know how many macros to eat? They're not necessarily going to be bang on, because they're going to ask you some questions and punch these factors into a formula. They're not like talking to you and learning other things about you, but it's a place to start. And so the typical ratio that I find to be the best for people to start off with, that's going to take blood sugar into account, hormonal balance into account, is to do a 40-30-30 split. So 40% carbohydrate, 30% protein, 30% fat, okay? The biggest question I get by far around this is the toggling of the carbohydrates. Everybody wants to drop their carbohydrates. For some people, especially if they have a lot of issues around blood sugar instability, around insulin resistance, that might be an approach I take, but I would say, I would caution you not to go below 90 grams of carbohydrates. I find the sweet spot for most people is 90 to 150 grams of carbs. But I will tell you, like when I was training for my fitness show and I was lifting weights heavy, 5 and 6 days a week, and I was doing cardio, I was in the upwards of 300 grams of carbohydrates a day. And that was actually getting me leaner than when I was decreasing the carbohydrates. So don't be fooled by this misnomer that in order to lose weight, everyone and their mother should cut their carbs. Some people need to actually increase their carbohydrate intake, lower their fat intake slightly, and keep that protein somewhere in around the range of 0.86 to 1 gram per pound of lean body weight. But again, that would be something that I would say, like, you can use some of those apps online. But if this is something that sounds attractive to you and you're thinking, I'd really like to try that approach for my body, because what's nice about the macros is that you can fit in a lot of foods that you still enjoy into it. It's just a numbers game, right? It's just a numbers game. So you can factor that in. Now, some people will say to you, well, if it fits your macros, as long as it fits your macros, don't worry about what the food is made up of. I know so many people that are filling it up with like just junk. Don't do that, because if it's junk in, it's going to be junk out in terms of how you feel and how your body will function moving forward. And if it doesn't show up on the scale, that is going to show up somewhere else in terms of how you're feeling in your health overall. Okay. Now, exercise selection. First question, what's your current health? If you have adrenal burnout, if you have an autoimmune condition, if you're recovering from an illness or from an injury, then you're not going to be jumping into a lot of high intensity work right now. Here's the foundation for your movement. First things first, I will say this again. I want you to move your body 7 days a week. This whole thing of like just exercise 3 to 4 times a week, exercise and movement are two different things. Movement is like going for a walk, getting up and moving your body, stretching, mobility, range of motion. Every single day you need to move your body. Exercise is when we are increasing our heart rate, when we are increasing the amount of calories that we are burning. We have, a plan in mind and an end goal and objective that's in front of us. Exercise, I exercise 6 days a week. I move my body 7 days a week. I do it because it feels amazing. I do it because I know it's it literally is the thing that gets me closest to myself on a daily basis. Meaning when I move my body, I hear my body talk back to me. It lets me know whether or not I'm on the right track or I'm off track. It's also a really great way to be able to manage what your macronutrients are in terms of the food that you're taking in versus what you're burning through calories. It's not just about calories in, calories out. In order to really lose weight, you have to have a deficit. There has to be a deficit somewhere to lose weight. So either you're moving more than what you are consuming, or it's the ratio and the macros of what you are eating or the timing in which you are eating that is accomplishing that. But when we're looking at exercise, I believe everyone's baseline to start off with should be walking, Pilates, yoga, and strength training, okay? Now your strength training, you have this. You can do push-ups, planks, squats, lunges, tricep dips, so many different things with your own body weight. I have a crud ton of free content on my Instagram and on my website and on my YouTube of different movements. I have a free 7-day challenge, 15 minutes or less a day. using your body. Now, to amp it up, to crank up that intensity in terms of trying to lose weight and change the composition of your body, this is what I think is really important to understand is the scale is telling you nothing about your composition. Your clothes will help you understand more of that as terms of how they're feeling, doing measurements and getting your body fat done. Those are going to be the most effective ways of understanding what the composition of your system is. Adding in things like heavier strength training, right? Weights, like ladies, do not be afraid to add in the heavier weights. The only time you are going to bulk up when you're doing that is if you are still eating an inflammatory diet and lifting heavy weights, then what you're seeing is still a lot of the inflammation over top of the muscle belly, okay? So clean up what you're consuming and train at that intensity. High intensity interval training. HIIT training, if you do any of the research, HIIT training and Metcons are going to be the most effective way to lose weight for a healthy body, not a body that has adrenal burnout and thyroid issues. So if when you exercise, it wipes you for the rest of the day. Like every time you try to work out, you feel like you're getting a cold or you're getting sick. That is your body letting you know your resiliency is quite low. You don't have the adrenal reserve in the tank and you need to decrease the intensity. Keep moving, but decrease the intensity until you can bring it up. So what that might look like is you move your body 7 days a week and 2 out of the 7 are at a more intense ratio for you until you feel like this feels good. And I would recommend that you're not doing HIIT more than about, 4 times a week. If you're doing it right and you're doing it how it is supposed to be done, you don't need to be working at that intensity level 7 days a week. If you are working at a high intense level, 5, 6, 7 days a week, this can come around to bite you in the ass later on. And you might start to notice that your weight has plateaued or you're putting weight on, or now the composition is changing. You're feeling puffier or fluffier and you just feel like you have this new layer on your body. And so my recommendation would be to decrease the intensity. And I know that sounds crazy because we're taught you got to burn more than you're taking in. And that's the only way. For a lot of people, that's what they've been doing for far too long. And so you've got to change it up. Okay. All right. Let me come into the questions here for a moment. I don't know what keto tracking is, Lisa. So tell me what keto tracking is, and then I can answer that for you. Do you mean like in terms of tracking your fats and your protein and your carbs? I'm not a huge fan of keto. I'm not going to lie. For a couple of reasons, especially if you have a history of digestive issues, liver and gallbladder issues, I would not be recommending keto. And if you have a lot of hormonal issues, I think there's a better approach. I would say, if anything, if you need to give it a title in the beginning, is to focus more on a paleo approach where there's no gluten, there's no dairy. You're reducing the amount of grains that are coming in, which can be highly inflammatory and hard to break down. And you're focusing on, foods that fell off a tree, grew from the ground, swam in the ocean, and ran across land. Fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, healthy fats, healthy sources of protein to make up the bulk of what it is that your diet is that you are eating. Okay, so any questions before I go into enhancing what you're getting out of your food and then into the Q&A in terms of what I talked about with intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating, and macros and exercise? Any questions on those 4 before I go into your questions? And post your questions into the chat. The macro ratio is 40, 30, 30. So when you add it all up, it should equate to 100. So it would be 40% carbohydrate, 30% protein, 30% fat. That's a general range to start off with. I'm not saying that's what every single person should follow, but if you've never, ever tracked anything before, that would be a good place to start yourself off in for the first couple of weeks, just to get used to that. Okay. Okay. So no questions about that. Everybody understands. I'll give it 1 more minute because there is a bit of a time delay from when the question comes in to when I actually see it on the sidebar. Is it making sense? Yes. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. All right. So, okay, good. All right. This is good. It's a good thing it's making sense. Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah. And the recording will come out as well too. Okay, so let's hop back in here now. So the things to make sure that you're getting the nutrients out of the food that you're eating, because if you're nutrient deficient, this can be one of the reasons you're not losing weight either, right? One of the reasons we crave certain things is we're not actually craving like the chocolate bar or the chicken wings or, you know, the puff pastry. It's that our body is like, you brought food in, but you didn't bring nutrients in. So you got to go back and get me more until I get what it is that I need. So go back to your digestion. What's happening there and how can you optimize it? Eliminate the triggers, the things that you know are really irritating your gut, okay, or that you are suspecting are irritating your gut. Focus on those good combinations at your meals of protein, fat, and fiber. Slow down, chew your food, eat a little bit less than you probably think you need to. I will tell you, this is another hack. I do not eat off a dinner size plate. I eat off the same size plate as my kids, which is a salad size plate. We eat really nutrient dense food. I discovered a long time ago, I do not need the same amount of food that my husband does. Okay. I don't need to have a big dinner plate. The problem is we're visual people. So if you have a larger plate, you're going to fill it until there's no more room on there. Go to a salad plate and you'll be amazed. In the beginning, you might find that you're a little bit hungry. But over time, what you'll find is you eat that and you're like, either I'm really satisfied or I'm actually full and I didn't eat the whole plate. And for me, it started because I recognized what I wasn't tracking when I was holding on to excess weight in my body. What I wasn't tracking was the food I was eating off my kids' plates, the extra spoonful of nut butter or 4 spoons of nut butter, the licks, like the LBTs, the licks, the bites, and the taste that I was having throughout the day that I was just like, oh, well, that doesn't count. Oh, well, that was just an extra mouthful of that. That was a sip of this. Well, that wasn't on my plate, so that doesn't count. That adds up to hundreds of calories in a day. And it's 3,500 calories, you know, in a pound. So if we look at every day, if you're getting in X amount of those things or empty calories, this is where the alcohol comes in, right? Average glass of wine and a 4-ounce glass of wine. So not the average like 8-ounce glass. If you're having an 8-ounce glass of wine every night or when you're having it, that's in the upwards of 300 calories. But no nutrients. So it's literally empty calories. And if you did that, you know, over the course of 7 days, that is like over 2,000 calories just in that glass of wine. It's the same thing if you're having like a Frappuccino or you're having you know, like a sugary latte. My gosh, like the kids, one of their things for homeschooling is that they've been looking at different recipes. And so my daughter was looking at different drink recipes to make. And, you know, one of them, which was like labeled as a healthy one, well, it had 3 tablespoons of powdered sugar in it. That is 45 grams of sugar. And it was to teach them how to make certain drinks that they sell at Starbucks. 45 grams of sugar just in that. That's not including the sweetened milk that was another 8 grams of sugar, right? Sweetened coconut milk. And then it was, there was a 1/4 cup of hot chocolate mix in there. That's like another 18 grams of sugar. You add all of that up, by the end of it, that drink would equate to like 80 to 100 grams of sugar. They're not supposed to have more than 50 in a day. And us as an adult really shouldn't be taking in more than about 60 in a day in terms of sugar. I try to aim to keep it below about 40 grams. And so it's like you just start to add it up and you're like, holy cow, here's where we think we're eating healthy. But then we start to see the reality of what's in the things that we are consuming. And it's like, yikes, right? It's crazy when you start to really add it up. Yes, me and my nut butter, it is my kryptonite. It's boring. I know people are like, what's your thing that you really love? Sorry, guys, it's boring. It's almond butter. How terrible is butter or basil, olive oil, margarine? I do a great job of half plating veggie, but I know I load it up with butter. So I would get away from any margarine. And if you're going to have butter, have organic grass-fed butter or ghee. Ghee is where they've clarified it. And so there's no whey in it. So for anybody who has any issues with any dairy or, you know, that taking that out is going to be healthier. But if you're loading it up, I wouldn't be loading it. You can do like a little bit on it, but I would not be loading it. Or the other alternative, Janice, would be to actually drizzle it with some olive oil or some pumpkin seed oil, and then do some herbamar or some fresh cracked Himalayan sea salt, which is beautiful for your adrenals. Okay. All right. Okay. So other little tips in there. is to, my final tip in that, other than like chewing your food and eating less, is to start to try to do the time restricted eating window, right? Like get rid of the evening snacking. Oh my gosh. If that was the only thing that you come away with this on, is to stop eating 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed, I promise you so much of the bloat, the puffiness, you'd probably lose a few pounds within your first couple of days. I have women who do this, and within a couple of weeks, they're down 5 to 7 pounds. And it's that little bit that helps them do up their pants in a more comfortable way. Okay. Now, biohacking your health in 7 simplicity steps. So stay with me on this. And again, it's going to be recorded, so you'll be able to write these down. Number one thing you might not think is making a difference is improving your posture. So the more hunched over like this you are, the less digestive agni, fire, and energy that's getting into your gut. The diaphragm is also getting restricted. So I want you to improve your posture. Be very aware of how you are holding yourself. Roll out using the foam roll and the balls. Get rid of those kinks that can be holding on to a lot of the junk that's in your system, okay? Your fascia is a massive system in your body that's communicating with the nervous system. And if it's holding on to a lot of stored toxicity and junk, that's refiltering through your body, right? So stretch, break it up, and move your system. Number 2 is eat the PFF lifestyle, the PUF lifestyle. That's the protein, fat, and fiber, okay? Cut the crap. Get the junk out. Somebody wrote in and said, one of her questions were, how do I not eat the baked goods that my 14-year-old is making at home right now when they smell and taste so good? You have to kick her out. She can't live there anymore. If it's a trigger, you're just going to have to ship her out. I'm joking, but you have to, this is where having a conversation with your family is really important as well too. Like if this is something you're struggling with and it's a big goal for you, you have to find your accountability partners, and you have to have open, honest conversations and say, like, it's hard for me. You don't understand. It's really hard for me if it is around. So if you want to bake it, amazing, but please put it somewhere where I don't have access to it until I'm strong enough to not want it. Number 3 is drink filtered water and ditch the plastic forever. So even if it's something like a Brita, I'm seeing so many people go and buy cases and cases of bottled water right now during this pandemic. And I'm like, nah. A, not good for the environment outside, so not good for your environment inside. Ladies, all of the xenoestrogens in that plastic is harmful to your thyroid, is harmful to your hormones as a whole, and will be one of the things that will actually, that microbiome that I was talking about, where certain things in there can have you hold on to weight and actually become more overweight over time. Plastic is one of the number 1. So get rid of it. Drink out of glass or stainless steel. Okay. Brita, Berkey filter. We just got a Kangen water system a couple of months ago. Love it. So many uses. Number 4 is to breathe deeply often. Take a pause. When you find yourself perusing the kitchen and opening up the cupboards and wanting to snack, ask yourself why. Walk away, take a couple of breaths, get outside, do something else, grab a glass of water, chew chewable vitamin C. Okay, I'd love if you were all getting extra vitamin C right now in any ways. Chewing chewable vitamin C, I love natural factors. It's tangy and it is kind of astringent and it will shift the palate in your mouth. Just walk away, okay? Get outside in fresh air daily is number 5. This is biohacking your nervous system. Get out in the fresh air. I don't care if you're walking for 7 minutes or if you're going for 70 minutes, but please get outside every single day. Number 6 is practice the time restricted eating. And number 7 is get some blue blockers, okay? I have a couple of different pairs. These are the ones that I wear generally during the day. These eliminate 50% of the light that's coming from my computer screen. I also have an app in here called Flux that decreases it. And at night, I wear an amber version of these to help to keep any of the blue light out, because that will stoke your cortisol. And if your cortisol is up, your melatonin will be down. And if you're not getting proper sleep, you're going to battle against that waistline as well too. And this is something that happens often to women coming into menopause and beyond, is because your estrogen is dropping. And so when estrogen is dropping, sleep is already going to be challenged and your waistline is already going to be challenged. So do the things at night that are going to help. Blue blockers, get off the devices, wear a sleep mask. Okay, I'm going to show you mine. Hold on. Really inexpensive, okay? Looks like a little bra, but it doesn't touch your actual eyes every single night. This is a game changer for so many people in terms of getting to sleep faster and having a deeper sleep and staying asleep longer. And then making sure for your sleep, ideal time right now would be 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. That'll give you 8 glorious hours of rest. In the beginning, even if it means you can't sleep for that whole time, can you be lying down in your bed? Can you have sex? Okay. I know everyone's like, did you actually just suggest that? But listen, hear me out on this. Okay. You don't have to do it every day. You don't even have to tell your partner that I've said this, but intimacy, sex, orgasm, touch, all of that is going to produce oxytocin, okay? There are numerous studies that show oxytocin is super important for our mood, decreasing anxiety and depression, but also incredibly supportive for your metabolic system overall. So that's another thing to think about, but you can just keep that between yourself right now if you would like to. In terms of your supplements, like I said, I'm going to attach my other 2 webinars into the recording of this so you have that. And now coming into the questions that were submitted and then the questions that you have live. So because all of you took the time out of your day, I'm going to come to you first and ask the questions that you have now. And then for those of you that have to get going, you can get going. And then I might just answer these ones here so that they're in this and then be able to send that recording out. So what are your questions that I have not covered that you have for those of you that are on live right now? Take another sip of water and create a little pause. My thoughts on gluten. My thoughts on gluten are to remove it, to be honest. And gluten is not like a fad thing. It's a highly inflammatory food that is in way too many things. And I have just done, I mean, I do the work. This is what I do. And, you know, I always knew the impacts of gluten, but having just come through my functional medicine diagnostic program, the impacts on our mucosal barrier, on the lining of our gut, are extremely, extremely detrimental. And so ingesting gluten is breaking that barrier down every single time we consume it. It's actually injuring it, nicking it, and creating more vulnerability for that barrier to no longer be able to fend off and fight off the things that we don't want to have in our system. It's also highly inflammatory for any autoimmune conditions, any joint pain, inflammation, massively for thyroid as well too. So I'm a huge educator on trying to get people off of gluten, but then when you are choosing gluten-free products, that you're not just, you know, filling up on potato starch and a bunch of sugar and junk. So really looking at the quality of what is in those products. Easiest way is to start to move towards naturally grains that never had gluten in the first place. Best time for digestive enzymes would be about 20 to 30 minutes before lunch and dinner. Okay, so you are taking the Now Super Enzyme, which is a great one, Anita, but I would take it before lunch and dinner. I find most people don't need the digestive enzyme capsule before breakfast. That's when I would do the warm water, lemon, and a little bit of apple cider vinegar. How to improve your adrenals. So I'm actually going to send you guys in the recording my adrenal masterclass that I just did. I think it was last Saturday. It was over an hour long, and I give tons of tips in that. Do digestive bitters have the same effect as apple cider vinegar? I find they're a little bit stronger. The reason that I recommend both is just from a cost perspective, right? Apple cider vinegar is less expensive and has more variety. Like we put it in our salad dressing all the time. But with the digestive bitters, the synergy of them together can just be a little bit more potent and stronger for the person who is just doubled over with gas and bloating and feels like every time they eat, they look 5 months pregnant after. But it does taste like you are taking a shot of like Jägermeister. Just an FYI. You can actually save 10% on your St. Francis products if you go to purefeast.ca and enter in the code St. Francis 10. You can save 10% off any of your orders, and they'll just drop ship it to your house. When walking, is 10,000 steps still a good goal to help weight loss? I think it is. I think it's a really good baseline, those 10,000 steps. And then what I would say, Shireen, is if you notice that 10,000 now becomes your average and your body is kind of adapting, add 1,000 steps at a time to try and kind of work your way up to it. But I really do think, because I've done this test on myself as well too. And, you know, it's like when I go on a walk, I kind of map it out using my Oura ring. So I have a walk that'll give me like 1,000 steps, 2,000 steps, 5,000 steps. To do that. So I really do love the 10,000 step goal. I think it's a good one. If your gallbladder was removed, do you need to take enzymes? 100% you do. And I'm so glad that you asked that question because I forgot to mention this. If you don't have a gallbladder, you absolutely need digestive enzymes, and you probably need something a little bit stronger than the apple cider vinegar. So you need to take something that has bile and pancreatins. So something like ox bile. There is a great one from Pure Encapsulation that I really like. Designs for Health has very good ones as well too. And you would take that before your lunch and dinner, 100%. How much apple cider vinegar in the morning with warm water? I do about a half a tablespoon. I get heartburn when I drink warm water with apple cider vinegar. I read that it could be H. pylori. It could be for sure. So instead of doing that, what you could do is you could use, and you can't do this with every essential oil, but Doterra essential oils, some of them you can ingest. And I would do 1 drop of their lemon oil in your warm water. Or you can try some fresh grated ginger, or you could do a lemon ginger tea in the morning in the tea bag and let it steep for about 7 to 10 minutes. And then it's not going to be as acidic. And then if you're thinking that H. pylori is part of the problem because you have some other digestive issues going on, I would definitely do a GI map test and test for that. Do I have any food suggestions for vegans? What do you mean in terms of that? Like what type of food suggestions? I definitely wouldn't be eating a lot of the like pretend meats that are out there, because when you look at a lot of the ingredients, they are not very good at all. Like the Eve's company, I don't like anything that they have that's out there. And so it's just reading what your ingredients are. And the tricky part, because I was vegan for a long time, I was vegetarian, I am not anymore, is that your foods that are high in protein are also your foods that are typically high in your carbohydrates. So it's like trying to figure out that balance with it. So I would be turning to things like, if you're going to do things like tempeh, miso, and tofu that you're doing, cold water washed, you are doing organic and fermented. And then you're going to be looking at things like your legumes mostly for that. Your nuts and your seeds as well too are going to help out with that. I would make a lot of your nut and your seed butters as well, so that there's nothing being removed and that you're getting all of the goodness from them. And then I'd be looking at different plant-based protein powders as well. Genuine Health vegan fermented is my favorite. You mentioned doing HIIT workouts twice a week. How does that apply when following the synced? If you're following synced, you would do it as it's laid out, because some of those strength training sessions in there are high intensity. And then you've got a plyo and you have HIIT. So if you are training based on your menstrual cycle, then you are going to follow that program as it is laid out. What are my thoughts on goitrogenic foods? I find that even when I eat plant-based, I get bloated. Well, most people, the foods that bloat them the most are not animal protein, it's plant-based protein. And that's because they're higher in lectins. They can be harder to break down for most people. And so I would start with digestive enzymes for sure. The other thing is I would be roasting and steaming those foods. So if you're talking about goitrogens like kale or broccoli or if a lot of the brassica family and Brussels sprouts, cabbage, I would be steaming, broiling, roasting, and baking those and taking a digestive enzyme with them. Cecile, the ox bile is Pure Encapsulation. That's a really good company that I like. That's a digestive enzyme that has the ox bile in it. Okay, let me come in here. Some people have answered into, can you lower thyroid with food? I'm assuming what you mean by that is, can you do things to support your thyroid with your diet? 100% that you can. Yeah, definitely. Thoughts on tomatoes? I don't believe those crazy headlines saying they're bad for us. Well, actually, they can be really bad for some people because they're a deadly nightshade. So nightshades are potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, zucchini, onions, peppers, and they contain something called solanine, which for people who have arthritis and who have rheumatism and autoimmune conditions, nightshades can seriously flare them up in a big way. You are welcome. Any specific foods for endometriosis? Well, endometriosis, what we know now, I mean, the research is always happening, but in the last 18 months, what it's coming out as is it's now being referred to as an autoimmune condition, meaning that the bacteria in the gut is actually one of the big root causes for endometriosis, not purely estrogen. In the past, it was considered that endometriosis was purely an estrogen dominant based issue, and now it is coming back to the gut microbiome. I do want to keep this specific to weight loss stuff though, but Amy, it's something that I would have you look into, and this is a big part of what we cover in the Hormone Project as well. So working on your gut is going to be massive, and there's oftentimes for women a huge tie-in with endometriosis and SIBO. So those are some things that if you're not already working with a practitioner on, I would highly recommend that you do, because it'll save you a lot of time and energy if somebody can help to just narrow in on that. So either an ND who specializes in it, you can reach out to us to book a consultation as well too. We've opened up some private consult times that I normally don't do just right now while so many people are struggling. And if you're interested in that, what you can do is I'll put it down here. It's hello@jenpike.com. You can reach out about booking one of those. Is there, so ox bile and enzyme? No. So ox bile is in the enzyme. Okay, so it contains ox bile and pancreatin in the digestive enzyme. Is there a fiber supplement that I recommend? Honestly, I don't start with a fiber supplement. I would have you do ground flaxseed first. I would have you add about 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed into a smoothie or into some coconut yogurt, or I would do a couple tablespoons of chia seeds, and I would do that first as opposed to like a marketed fiber supplement. Moving forward, if you found that didn't shift things enough, then there is the GI Detox, which is from Designs for Health, and Renew Life has a good fiber powder supplement. How would one with hypothyroidism aim to lose weight? Get your blood sugar under control and your gut, and then really understand your numbers. So you have to understand what is TSH, which does not come from your thyroid. It actually comes from your pituitary in your brain that stimulates the thyroid. What's the problem with the thyroid gland? Is it low free T4? Is it conversion that's your issue where your T3 is really low? Do you have Hashimoto's where your antibodies are elevated? So dealing with Hashimoto's versus dealing with a regular underactive thyroid, things are going to be slightly different because you'll need to be on an autoimmune protocol if you have Hashimoto's. Biggest thing with thyroid and battling that weight is getting into that circadian rhythm. Your sleep is critical, the type of movement that you're doing is critical, and getting a really good dietary plan put in place for you, and then making sure that you're taking the right supplements and cofactors that are helping your thyroid do a better job. When the thyroid is impacted, the adrenals were impacted long before. And so if you're on something like naturally desiccated thyroid or Synthroid, going on that medication alone is not going to be enough, especially Synthroid because it's only T4, but our body and our metabolic system needs T3 in its active form. So I would again recommend really working with somebody who understands that so that they can then look at, well, are there other nutrients that we could add in? And that's part of also too, like for you as the individual, what would we be looking at in terms of the spacing of your meals, the blood sugar supporting meals, the calories and macronutrients throughout the day? Okay, you're welcome, Amy. Okay, you are welcome. Any other questions here? I'm just gonna, as you guys are posting, I'm gonna look and see what some of them that were submitted if they weren't already answered. So a lot already asked about thyroid, they asked about gluten and dairy, asked about exercise, which we covered. What else? The 10,000 steps. I'm all or nothing. I can't touch something unhealthy without eating it. Honestly, my best tip for you is get it out of your sight. Get it out of the house. If you have kids or a partner who are still bringing that stuff in, you have to create boundaries. You either, if you know that at a certain time of the day is when that snack stuff is coming out for them, you need to remove yourself from the situation. Think about it like how you would from just a toxic situation, right? Toxic people, whatever it may be. You wouldn't just stay there, I hope. You would remove yourself from it. So you might have to do that, or again, have that honest conversation with them and just say like, please, you know, this is a trigger for me. I just need you to not be eating it around me. Why is weight loss harder in menopause? Oh, for so many reasons that we started to tap into. That is something where for that type of stuff where you're super triggered by those hormonal changes that are happening, I would be testing, not guessing. I would be doing the full blood work panel. I would be doing a Dutch hormone test. And that's where I would be starting, is to really understand, because no two women have the same hormonal expression in perimenopause, menopause, or beyond. Right? Some can be dropping off estrogen first, others progesterone first, others it's all three sex hormones. They're low estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. It can be your detoxification pathways are sluggish and not moving, which is making you feel sluggish and things not moving, and while you're holding on to excess weight. The big thing with menopause is that when those hormones start to lower their production, this is going to impact your appetite. You're probably going to be hungrier. You're going to crave things that are saltier and sweeter. Your sleep is going to be off. And when the sleep rhythm is off, that'll impact your food and mood as well too. So I would highly, highly recommend that you test, not guess, because it is going to help you get to a plan faster instead of just trying to piece it together on your own and figure out what the heck you are supposed to do. You mentioned you're no longer vegan, vegetarian. What drove you to your decision to change your diet, and what do you do differently now? Yeah, so honestly, when I became pregnant with my daughter, my body was just looking for animal protein. And when I started to eat it, I actually felt way better. And I thought when I was vegan and vegetarian that I felt really good. And then when I started to feel even better putting animal protein back in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what energy feels like. And I didn't have any of the bloating or digestive issues. I thought that when I was vegan and vegetarian and I was bloated and gassy, that was just normal because of all the fiber I was eating. What I didn't realize is that it was actually just too much for my system. And so I'm an omnivore. So I eat eggs and fish and chicken and turkey. I still don't eat any red meat. I don't eat pork. I'll never put pork back into my diet. I haven't eaten pork since I was in my teens, and I'm 40. I won't eat veal, lamb, any of those. And that for me is just an ethical reason. I don't agree with how they make veal. And I have like an attachment to lambs, so I can't eat that. We'd never do dairy. Our kids are 13, almost 14 and 11. They've never had dairy in their life. So we do goat and sheep product. But we're still plant-based. And I think people get this confused. Like plant-based living, 80% of what we consume is like vegetables and healthy fats and things that are coming from plant-based nutrients. And then our animal products are what we put in there to get, a lot of our protein sources. I'll do things like bone broth. But yeah, I mean, we just have a really varied diet. Right? I don't subscribe to any one type. I don't subscribe to a title at all. Like I'm just Jen, and we eat healthy and we eat based on what makes our body feel good. That is at the end of the day, the bottom line for me is if I don't feel good eating something, even if someone has said to me that sounds like a good food you should eat, and I play around with it in my body, if my body responds by gas and bloating, headaches, not feeling good, that is not the food for me. And you have to listen. Your body will never steer you wrong. Ever. So please stop either being fear-mongered into eating a certain way, being pressured into eating a certain way, and you can't have a dogmatic approach. The years in my late teens and 20s when I was vegan and vegetarian, that served me really well. And my body changed, so my needs changed, so I had to change and adapt my approach. And this is happening all the time, right? And it's like my daughter and my husband, they eat red meat now. My son's not interested, he doesn't want to. And so in our house, like I'm just gonna let them choose based on intuitively what feels good for their body. And I think we could all learn something from that. Listen to what feels good. If how you're currently eating doesn't feel good, you really have to sit with that and ask yourself, is that maybe one of the reasons I'm holding on to this inflammation and these excess pounds? Is it because my body actually can't break down what it is that I am feeding it? You are welcome. Okay, guys, we have gone for 95 minutes. So I am going to hop off now. When we send this email out to you with the recording, give us about 3 days. Okay, it takes time to flip it. And then it'll probably come out to you, I would say Wednesday, maybe Thursday this week. And if you have any questions about anything else, then you can just respond via the email and we'll go from there. So have an amazing rest of your day, everyone. Take care.